Okay, so today we're going deep on a whole century of research into menstruation in high-income countries.
Wow.
It's not just one
A
paper.
century.
Yeah, we've got a massive analysis here
Right.
of over 100 studies, actually.
Wow.
104 with over 3,800 participants.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So we're really getting like a wide
Huge.
lens view of,
Huge. Yeah, really broad view of
yeah,
all these different
it's
experiences.
like having a time machine almost.
It is.
Looking back over 100 years and being able to see how cultural attitudes, societal expectations, even access to resources all play into how people experience menstruation.
And one of the things that I found so interesting was not just that there's a stigma around menstruation, but
Yeah.
the why.
The why, yeah.
Like, what is it about this that has made it so taboo for so long?
Yeah, well, the research really shows a pattern, and this goes all the way back to the early 20th century,
Oh, wow.
of viewing menstruation as something unclean or even dangerous.
Right.
Think about all those old wives' tales about not swimming or bathing during your period.
Oh, yeah.
Like that your hair would fall out.
Oh, gosh.
These kinds of things. It's fascinating to see how these ideas have persisted for so long.
It is wild how long some of these ideas have really stuck around.
Yeah.
Did you see any, pushback against that in the research at all?
Yeah, it's interesting because that taboo is really strong
Yeah.
throughout the entire period of time studied.
Right.
But you do start to see cracks in the foundation,
Okay.
especially in more recent years.
Makes sense.
Some of the participants, particularly the younger generations, are really challenging that silence. They're demanding more open conversations.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. We're more open about a lot of things now than
That's
we
right.
were, 100 years ago.
Right.
But can you imagine living in a time when you couldn't even ask for a pad without whispering?
It's hard to fathom
I know.
the level of secrecy.
Yeah, and this idea, the discreet dance that they talk about in the paper. It's more than just, hiding supplies, right?
It really is. It's this whole performance of pretending menstruation doesn't exist.
No.
Even when it's causing you discomfort or impacting your daily life, can you imagine the mental toll that takes?
And if you're already feeling isolated or ashamed on top of that,
Right.
not having that social support can really make things so much harder.
Absolute.
And the study talks about some people finding, comfort in their family or friends,
Yeah.
but others felt totally dismissed,
Yeah.
particularly when dealing with severe pain or discomfort.
Right. And it highlights this crucial point that even in high-income countries, where you would assume
Yeah.
there is ample support and resources, people's experiences can vary drastically.
Yeah, it really is very individual.
Very much so.
Speaking of resources, though,
Yes.
I was actually surprised to see that access to just basic supplies was an issue in some cases.
Yeah.
You would think that in wealthy nations that wouldn't even be a concern.
Right. You would think that.
Yeah.
But that's where it gets complex, you see,
Yeah.
because it's not just about having products.
Right.
It's about having affordable products,
Okay.
access to clean and private
Yeah.
facilities, even the way those resources are presented.
Yeah, so even seemingly small things like whether a school bathroom has free pads or coin-operated dispensers
Huge difference.
can make a huge difference in somebody's experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, and for low-income individuals or for transgender men,
Right.
those challenges can be even greater.
Right.
Right. Imagine the added stress of trying to manage your period
Yeah.
when you're already facing financial hardship or struggling with gender identity.
It's like all these things are so interconnected.
Absolutely.
Poverty, gender identity, access to healthcare.
Right.
They all intersect with this fundamental biological experience.
It's all intertwined.
Yeah, and we haven't even gotten to the emotional side of things yet.
I know, right? That's where the study gets really interesting. It goes beyond, this trope of the annoying period.
Right.
And it reveals this whole spectrum of emotions,
Yeah.
from frustration and shame
Yeah.
to even joy and empowerment.
Wow.
It's fascinating.
So it's really not just about cramps and leaks.
No,
It's about how those physical experiences actually intertwine with our emotions,
exactly.
our self-perception,
Yes,
even our relationship.
precisely. And all of this is happening, against this backdrop of evolving cultural norms. I mean, remember, we're talking about an entire century of change.
Right, 100 years.
Yeah.
We've gone from, reusable cloths to disposable pads
Right?
to menstrual cups. Like the way we manage our periods has undergone a revolution.
Absolutely. A complete transformation.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how those changes played out across different generations.
Yeah, well, that's where we're headed next.
Yeah.
Now, we'll unpack how these menstrual practices have evolved and what that tells us about where we are today.
Let's get into it.
Okay. It's amazing to think about how these changes, like from cloths to pads and tampons and cups,
Yeah.
reflect these bigger changes, in society.
Totally. It's like every time there was a new innovation,
Yeah.
it brought just like a little more freedom,
A little more freedom.
a little less restriction.
Exactly.
Do you think that impacted that discrete dance we were talking about?
Absolutely. I mean, even think about the language we use, like
Right.
Aunt Flo or that time of the month.
Oh, yeah. All the euphemism.
All these euphemisms,
Yeah.
which on the surface they might seem harmless,
Yeah.
but they really perpetuate this idea that we can't talk directly about it.
Yeah, we try to make it this thing that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And it's like that starts to creep into our behavior too, right?
Totally. The research has so many examples of people hiding tampons up their sleeve on the way to the bathroom, whispering about needing supplies.
Right.
Even avoiding certain activities because they're worried about leaking.
I think there's a quote in here from one participant who talked about feeling like she had to perform normalcy
Yes.
during her period, like she was constantly worried about being found out.
And it's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Just to think about.
Just to think about it, right?
Yeah.
And, this isn't just about personal discomfort.
Right.
These anxieties, these behaviors,
Yeah.
they're shaped by decades of cultural messaging telling us that menstruations is something to be ashamed of.
Right. But there is that shift that we talked about,
Yes.
especially with the younger generations, like in the more recent studies.
Absolutely. The participants talked about wanting to be more open,
Right.
more transparent
Yeah.
about their experience. And I think this desire for transparency, it really aligns with, the larger societal trends
Yeah.
to destigmatize these topics that were once taboo.
It's like we're finally breaking through that dam of secrecy.
Right.
And with that comes, I hope, a deeper understanding of just the emotional complexity of menstruation.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And, the research goes beyond, just acknowledging those negative emotions like the frustration and the shame.
Yeah.
It also highlights how some people experience joy, empowerment, even a sense of pride
Interesting.
in connection with their bodies.
Wow, that's a completely different way of looking at it.
It is. It's a real shift in perspective.
Yeah.
From something to hide to something to, embrace.
Yeah, and I imagine those positive emotions often come along with a sense of community,
Yes.
shared experience.
Absolutely. Just knowing that you're not alone
Right.
in what you're going through.
And that brings us back to resources, too.
Yeah.
Because when people feel supported,
Right.
emotionally and practically,
Right.
they're more likely to have positive experiences.
This study found a really strong correlation there
Yeah.
between having access to resources and overall well-being.
It's all connected.
It is, remember our example of the school bathrooms?
Yeah.
Providing free and discreetly available products
Right.
sends a very different message than a coin-operated dispenser.
Yeah, it's like a completely different message.
Yes.
It's about dignity,
Yes.
respect,
It's about making people feel seen.
making them feel seen
Yeah.
instead of like burdened or stigmatized.
Exactly. And, this applies not just to products,
Right.
but to access to accurate information,
Well, healthcare.
healthcare, and
Yeah.
just having a society that acknowledges the challenges that come with menstruation.
Yeah. So it seems like we've moved from secrecy and shame
Yeah.
to this growing awareness
Right.
of the complexity.
And complexity.
But what about the practical implications of all of this? Like,
Yeah.
how do we actually approach things like healthcare and education differently?
Yeah. That's a great question.
It feels like we keep coming back to this idea of creating like a more supportive environment.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
Is it just like talking about periods more openly?
Well, I mean, that's definitely a start, right?
Right.
But think about the impact of like
Yeah.
comprehensive menstrual education
Yeah.
from a young age.
Okay.
Not just like the biology of it,
Right.
but the social and emotional aspects too.
I mean, can you imagine
Right.
learning about periods in a way that actually normalizes the experience? It
Exactly.
validates those emotions,
Yeah.
gives you practical tips for managing the discomfort.
Totally.
Yeah.
And this education needs to go beyond the classroom.
Right.
We need these conversations in families,
Yeah.
in communities,
And workplaces.
in workplaces.
But
Exactly.
it doesn't stop
It doesn't stop.
impacting our lives
No,
just because we leave school.
absolutely not.
Like, what about when you're dealing with,
Right.
horrible cramps at work?
Right. Or a super heavy flow.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the times when
Yeah.
access to healthcare is crucial.
Yeah. And even when you have access, in those high-income countries,
Right.
there's still a chance of running into misinformation or just dismissive attitudes.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, oh, period pain is normal.
Yeah.
Just toughen up.
Oh, yeah. Like it's just part of being a woman.
Right.
And the research really shows that those attitudes can lead to delayed diagnoses, inadequate treatment,
Wow.
and just a sense of not being heard.
Right.
Imagine struggling with something like endometriosis for years,
Yeah.
simply because your pain was downplayed
Or misdiagnosed.
or misdiagnosed. Exactly.
Wow.
It's heartbreaking, really.
Yeah, it really is.
And it highlights the need for, more research,
Right.
better training for healthcare providers,
Yeah.
and just greater understanding of these conditions,
Yeah.
like endometriosis, PMDD.
All those menstrual-related health issues.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the economic barriers either.
Right, because the cost of period products can be,
Huge.
especially for people living in poverty.
Absolutely. And that's why initiatives like
Mm.
providing free period products in schools,
Right.
shelters, public restrooms are so important.
It's about making sure that everybody's needs are met,
Exactly.
no matter what their income.
Regardless of income or social status.
It comes back to dignity and respect.
Yes.
When you have those resources, you
Right.
can manage your period.
You can focus on other things in
Yeah.
your life.
Okay, so we've covered education healthcare resources.
Yeah.
What about those more subtle barriers?
Oh, yeah. The
Like-
subtle ones.
Like the design of public restrooms?
Right.
Or just the lingering discomfort
Yeah.
around talking about menstruation in the workplace?
Those are often rooted in that stigma and lack of understanding.
Right.
Think about
Yeah.
providing those free products
Yeah.
in a discreet way
Right.
in workplaces.
Right.
It normalizes it.
Yeah, sends that message.
It sends a message
Of support.
Of support, exactly. And then when people feel supported,
Right.
they feel more comfortable being open
Yeah. They're more likely to be open about their needs,
about their needs.
whether that's needing to take a break,
Yeah.
to deal with discomfort, or just access to a private restroom. So really, it's about creating an environment where this is just a normal
Yes.
part of life.
Exactly. Not something to whisper about.
Right.
It's not something to hide.
And that takes a collective effort,
Absolutely.
like individuals and institutions.
Everyone.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What can our listeners do
Yeah.
to contribute to this?
Well, I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Educate yourself,
Yeah.
challenge your own assumptions,
Be open to learning.
be open to learning from other people's experiences.
Don't be afraid to talk about it.
Yes. Start conversations with
Yeah.
your friends, family, colleagues.
The more we talk about it.
The more it becomes normalized.
Right.
And we break down the stigma.
Exactly. And if you're in a position
Yeah.
to advocate for change,
Yeah.
whether that's in your workplace
Or in your community.
or through supporting organizations
Yeah.
that are working on menstrual equity,
Get involved.
get involved.
It-
Don't hesitate.
We're all in this together. It's a shared experience.
Yeah. And by working together,
Yeah.
we can create a world
Absolutely.
where everyone feels supported, informed,
Empowered.
empowered.
That's the goal.
That's what we want.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive
Well, thank you for having me.
into the evolution of menstrual experiences
It's been a pleasure.
in high-income countries.
Yes.
And we hope you leave
I hope so too.
feeling informed,
Yes.
inspired,
Inspired.
and ready to create a more supportive world
For everyone.
for everyone.